Both Democrats and Republicans, as we know, do travel by air. This doesn't seem to be a partisan issue. The bill passed with bipartisan support. So can you talk about where you agreed and disagreed with your Republican colleagues?
Well, I think a lot of the disagreements and agreements were not necessarily party line votes, other than to back caucus members. And we were able to get to an agreement on quite a few things that we had disagreements on. Sometimes it was much more regional, so that it was much more looking at what was important for those who come from states with more smaller airports versus those who come from states with larger airports. So really, the issue wasn't so much partisan, I think, which is why we were able to come to such a good bill in a bipartisan way. And oftentimes, there were times when I was not in agreement with my Republican colleagues in the Senate, but I had Republican colleagues in the House who supported my bill. So it's everything on pilot training to the number of additional flights to fly out of DCA, to raising the pilot age, to how we fund airport improvements. For the most part, they weren't partisan. They were much more regional and state-based and constituent-based.
There have been concerns over the past few months about airplane safety because of a few highly publicized moments. One that comes to mind is the door blowing off mid-flight during an Alaskan Airlines flight. How does this bill address safety concerns?
Well, we have language in there. Number one, by funding the FAA so that they could actually have the people doing the work that needs to be done. One of the things that happened over the years was that the FAA entered into an ODA program, which is a program that allows the aircraft manufacturers to basically self-certify, as opposed to having an FAA official there to certify an aircraft design. They were allowed to self-certify, and it was a program that Boeing abused, resulting in the tragedies of the two Boeing MAX 8 flights that killed hundreds of people. By funding the FAA so they could actually have enough people to do the work and not rely on industry to self-certify, we're going to be able to ensure greater safety. By funding the NTSB at a higher level, we're going to allow them to do their jobs. We also have language in the bill that requires more oversight from the FAA over aircraft manufacturers, and that's going to help that process as well. So it's really about making the FAA healthy again after years of, not even having an administrator. Now that we have one, we went 3 years without an administrator. We finally have one. It's about making sure they have the workforce to do the job that needs to be done, whether it's in the air traffic control towers or whether it is those FAA safety inspectors who are inspecting airports and inspecting aircraft manufacturers. And then also making sure that we provide the funding so that we can upgrade all of our airports to have the necessary equipment like ground radars that will prevent aircraft collisions on the taxiway.
Senator, what's next for the FAA reauthorization bill?
We're going to have this vote. So it's going to come to the floor for the vote, hopefully this week or next, and we'll pass it into law, and then we can really roll up our sleeves and start to execute a lot of the programs that are provided for within the legislation.
Senator Tammy Duckworth, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.